Now, as you can see, the zone resources are specified in the zone configuration, which is stored as an XML file under etc. zones. And that information is called persistent storage or stable storage for the zone. Now we can change that by using the zone CFG command, but we may have to reboot the zone in order for that to take effect. There are some resources that can be set dynamically, so you can apply them to running zones. For example, CPU and RAM can be changed in a normal lightweight non-global zone, but unfortunately not in a kernel zone. But we can do things like adding a network device. Now we can change the resources, but we need to do it persistently, and then we need to reboot the zone. So let's go through an example. Okay, go into zone config, zone CFG, and I'll get a prompt. Bear in mind I'm doing this on the persistent storage and it won't affect the running zone. Select cap memory, and then I can type info to see what the current setting is, 4Gs, and I'm going to change it. To 6Gs. Do an info again. End to close that little section. Verify. Everything's good. Okay. I could also change CPUs in a similar fashion. Having verified, I'm going to commit and then exit. So if I do zone CFG minus Z K zone 1 export, the information has changed. There you can see physical is now 6 gig, but the zone hasn't yet used any of that, and I would need to do a reboot to bring that into effect. So why don't we do that? Okay, if I Z log in, I'll log into the console using the -C option, and then we can watch the reboot occurring. Just to show you, in case you're wondering, the memory is still 4 gig. So if I reboot, okay, being a kernel zone, it will probably take a little bit longer to reboot than a normal non-global zone that doesn't have its own kernel. Any second now we should be able to log in once again. The sendmail message is because I don't have DNS running and I don't have a fully qualified hostname, which sendmail doesn't like. So let's log in again, and let's do the prtconf command again. Now I've got 6 gig, so the zone configuration required that I reboot the machine to do that. That's not always the case. If we move on, let me show you how I can actually add to a running zone. So Woody is running. I'm going to exit from the console, back to Buzz, which is my host global zone, and I'm going to do a zone CFG K zone 1 minus R, which will allow me to operate on a running zone. And I'm going to add another network interface, which is known as an ANET. It creates something called a virtual network interface, or VNIC. Okay, I've already got a VNIC with an ID of 0, which I showed you earlier. Now I can do a set ID equals 1. Not strictly necessary, but this will come up as net 1. The existing one being net 0. And now, if I do a commit, that has actually changed the running zone. It hasn't changed the persistent storage. Now if I export, there you can see the currently running configuration. And if I exit and go back into my K zone 1 again, to a DLADM show link, and there we have it. We have a new net 1. Now I would have to make a change to the persistent storage Let's come out of there. And I would have to zone config without the -r. Okay, now I've only got one ANET ID 0, and I can add ANET set ID equals 1 and verify, commit to storage, and then exit. Okay, and then if I do zone CFG -z k zone 1 export, I've now got another network address in permanent storage. So my changes will now persist when I reboot the zone. Okay. So unfortunately I can't change things like RAM, and I can't change CPUs with a kernel zone. I have to reboot, but I can do things like add a network interface, and I can add other hardware as well if I need to. Okay. Now what I could have done instead of what I did, in that I didn't need to change the running zone, I could have changed the persistent storage as in the example that I just did. Okay. And then rather than applying to the running zone, I can do a zone ADM -z Apache apply, which would then have applied the persistent storage to the running zone. If I changed aspects like the ANET or added an ANET, those things would be applied. But if I did things like memory and CPU, nothing would happen. As you can see from the example here, zone ADM -z k zone 1 apply, it says nothing to apply because it can't do it. There's quite a few other options. By the way, ordinary zones, non-kernel zones, can have RAM and CPUs dynamically changed. And there's a very good documentation for Oracle Solaris and kernel zones, and there's a reference there at the bottom of the page which you can easily Google, which will show you all the different options that are possible. Bear in mind, just another reminder, that changing things like CPUs in zones may contradict Oracle database licensing, and you'd be well advised to download this article that I'm showing you here, this PDF, which is called Hard Partitioning with Oracle Solaris Zones, which will give you some examples about to show what Oracle will accept as ways of setting CPUs for Oracle licensing purposes.